Welcome to another Music as a Podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jenna, and we are going to take you on a music journey. We dig through, stacks of source material, articles, biographies, notes, basically everything we can find, and pull out the key insights you need to really grasp a topic.
And today, we're looking at Bruce Springsteen. But not just the music, not just the concerts.
No, we're analyzing the blueprint, you could say, the architecture of one of the great American myths.
That's it. Because when people hear Bruce Springsteen, they think stadiums, right? They think huge shows, those roaring anthems.
Absolutely. Freedom, escape.
But the real story, the journey we're looking at today, it doesn't kick off on some massive stage like the Meadowlands. It actually starts somewhere much smaller, much quieter.
Freehold, New Jersey.
Exactly. A small kind of industrial town. And even more specifically, it starts in this cramped kitchen on Randolph Street, a place defined really by love, but also by this deep, painful silence.
So our mission here is a psychological deep dive. We're focusing on the first, let's say, 2 decades of his career, roughly 1949, his birth year, up to around 1992.
And we're tracing a very specific path, how the reality, the sometimes harsh reality of his working-class background really fueled those first big mythic breakthroughs.
And then how the fame that came with it, that global stardom, almost crushed him. How it nearly destroyed his sense of self.
And finally, how this pretty severe personal crisis forced him, basically, to dismantle the whole thing, the E Street persona, the legend, just to figure out who the actual man underneath it all was.
We've pulled together sources covering, everything from that Freehold childhood, the formation of the E Street Band, obviously the key album.
Oh yeah, Born to Run, Darkness, The River, Nebraska, which is a whole story in itself. Bowling USA, Tunnel of Love.
And leading up to that emotional crisis point, the E Street Band breakup and how he sort of had to reinvent himself in the early 90s.
So the core question, the real tension we're exploring is this. How did the guy who became, arguably, the ultimate American working-class icon?
The stadium filler, the boss.
Right. How did that guy find himself in a position where he had to tear down his own fame, fire his legendary band, his brothers, really?
Just to survive, just to find himself again.
Exactly. How did that happen?
Okay, let's start at the beginning. Phase 1. The blueprint, Freehold, the trauma, and finding that escape hatch. This is roughly 1949 to 1972.
Right. And to get the myth, you first need to get Freehold. Post-war New Jersey. The sources paint a picture that's not exactly charming small-town America.
No, it sounds pretty hard-edged. Blue-collar, heavy industry.
Totally. Rug mills, machine shops, bleaching plants.
Yeah.
It was a place, Bruce often said, where people got by, they didn't get ahead. Life was about endurance, not necessarily ambition.
And that wasn't just the physical landscape, right? It was the social vibe, too.
Absolutely. Heavily Catholic, economically kind of stagnant for a lot of families. And this environment, it just carves his understanding of America, a struggle, long before he ever picked up a guitar.
So when he writes about struggle, it's not abstract. It's the streets he walked, the factories he saw his dad go to.
Precisely. He wasn't imagining it. He was living it, observing it. And that's how an ordinary town, a place you might just drive through, becomes mythic in his songs. He takes that dead-end reality and transforms it.
Into something like Thunder Road, that desperate hope for escape.
Exactly. But the real architecture of his art, maybe even his suffering, it was built inside that house. 87 Randolph Street, I think it was.
And you had these two opposing forces inside. His mother, Adele.
Adele was the light, definitely. The sources describe her as warm, steady. She worked as a legal secretary, the financial rock, really, and the emotional backbone, too. Crucially, she encouraged his sensitivity.
Which must have been rare in that kind of environment.
Very rare. And then you have the shadow, his father, Douglas.
Yeah.
He struggled intensely with what we now recognize as serious mental illness. Undiagnosed at the time, of course. Chronic depression, maybe bipolar disorder. He drank a lot.
And the silence. Bruce talks about that silence constantly.
Yeah, the image is him just sitting in the dark kitchen, chain smoking, locked in these internal battles, often just silent.
And Bruce, as a kid, is trying to connect, right?
Yeah.
Trying to break through that.
Constantly trying to get a reaction, trying to amuse him, connect somehow, and mostly just hitting that wall of silence, that withdrawal. It was painful.
And a powerful lesson for a young boy.
Absolutely. He learned early on that masculinity, at least as he saw it modeled, often meant this kind of emotional lockdown, a cage, he called it. Duty, silence, but no real connection.
And this isn't just backstory. This is the raw material.
It's the raw material. Decades later, you hear it pouring out, the fury in Adam raised a Cain.
Which is so direct, almost biblical in its anger.
Or the empathy, the understanding that comes later in Factory. That's a direct portrait of his dad's life, the weariness of it.
Even My Father's House, that haunting feeling of being pursued by the past.
It all traces back to those nights in the kitchen, trying to finish a conversation that never really started.
You mentioned the Catholicism of the town. That played a role too, didn't it? St. Rose of Lima School.
Hugely important, and not in a comforting way, according to him. He mostly felt fear there. The nuns, the discipline.
Iron Fist.
Yeah. But also the imagery, sin, redemption, guilt, salvation, this incredibly intense moral framework. That became, as he put it, the spiritual architecture of his songwriting.
It gave him a sense of drama, the high stakes.
Exactly. Why are his songs often so operatic? Life or death? Heaven or hell on the Jersey Turnpike? It's because he learned that sense of ultimate consequence, that moral weight in those Catholic classrooms. It let him treat, a kid fixing up a car like it's a biblical struggle.
So the pressure's building. Where's the escape?
Instantaneous. September 9th, 1956, he's 6 years old, watches Elvis Presley on The Ed Sullivan Show.
The famous hip swivel.
And boom, a lightning strike, he calls it. Elvis was everything. Freehold wasn't. Sexual, rebellious, dangerous, forbidden fruit. It was a glimpse of another possible self.
And that set the course. Music became the way out.
It did. Adele, his mom, first rented him a cheap guitar, $6. Then, when he was 13, she took out a loan, $60, which was real money then for them, for a Kent guitar.
That's a serious investment in a dream.
Especially since pretty much nobody else believed in it. His dad, Doug, apparently mocked him for it, which just reinforced for Bruce that music was his thing, his private world.
Oxygen.
Yeah. If Freehold felt like a prison, music was the key. It promised freedom. And later, he realized, it was also therapy.
So he starts learning, practicing. How does he get from the bedroom to the stage?
The Jersey Shore circuit. His apprenticeship. His first real band was the Castiles, starting around 65. This was crucial training.
Learning the ropes.
Totally. Rehearsal discipline, playing with others, figuring out how to perform live. They played school dances, VFW halls, the local scene.
But reality keeps intruding, even there.
Yeah. A big moment was in 1967. The Castiles drummer, Bart Haynes, was killed in Vietnam.
Oh.
That hit hard. And you can see the seeds being planted there for his later themes. Working class sacrifice, the cost of war, the way youth gets chewed up by forces beyond its control. He saw early on that the escape route wasn't always safe.
Then came Steel Mill, right, around 69.
Right, Steel Mill was a step up. He's writing more, developing his own style. This is where the frontman starts to really emerge. They play these long, loud, improvised sets, storytelling through volume, as someone described it.
And Asbury Park becomes the laboratory.
Asbury Park was everything. Gritty, artistic, a little bit dangerous. The boardwalk, the clubs, especially the Upstage Club, that was his proving ground. Night after night, this shy kid from Freehold got on stage and found the only place he felt he truly had permission to exist.
He also started meeting other musicians who expanded his horizons.
Critically important. Meeting keyboardist David Sanchez was huge. Sanchez introduced him to way more sophisticated stuff. Soul, jazz fusion, the whole black musical tradition. That deeply influenced the sound that would become the E Street Band. He wasn't just a folk rock guy anymore. He was soaking it all in.
Okay, so the Jersey Shore apprenticeship is done. How does he make the leap? Phase 2. The mythic ascent, finding the voice, finding the band. This is 72 to 75.
Yeah, the leap needed a catalyst, a believer. And that was Mike Appel.
The manager.
The manager, the evangelist. Appel heard Bruce's lyrics as if these wild, poetic, almost stream of consciousness things, and famously called him Dylan with a shotgun.
Quite a description.
Appel fought tooth and nail for him, believed he was the next big thing. Now, that relationship got really complicated later, legally.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. But early on, Appel was the engine. And he got Bruce the audition that mattered. John Hammond at Columbia Records, May 1972.
The legendary John Hammond. Discoverer of Dylan, Aretha, Billie Holiday, music royalty.
Exactly. And Bruce walks in, apparently with his beat-up acoustic guitar, plays a couple songs. Growing up, it's hard to be a saint in the city, or supposedly two of them.
And Hammond.
Signed him on the spot. He saw the storyteller, the poet. The new Dylan tag started right there, really.
Which led to the first album, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, in 73.
Recorded fast. Definitely showcased that street poet side, the romantic dreamer. Critics liked the lyrics, the sheer volume of ideas spilling out.
But commercially,
Not much happened. sales were low, and maybe that new Dylan thing kind of boxed him in. Columbia wasn't exactly thrilled.
But something else was happening around the same time, something crucial for the myth.
Ah, yes. The meeting. 1972, maybe early 73. Bruce meets Clarence Clemens,
The big man.
the big man, at the Student Prince Club in Asbury Park, supposedly during a storm. Bruce describes it almost supernaturally, like fate walking in. Clarence silhouetted in the doorway.
It sounds like something out of one of his own songs.
Totally. And Clarence became more than just the sax player. He was the foil, the brother figure, the visual anchor. That partnership became absolutely central to the E Street myth.
So first album doesn't sell. Pressure's on for the second one.
Immense pressure. He knew he had to prove himself, show he wasn't just a critic's darling or a Dylan wannabe, and the answer was the wild, the innocent, and the E Street Shuffle later in 73.
And this is where the sound explodes.
This is it. The E Street sound is born here. The band Clemens, Sanchez on keys, Danny Federici on organ, Gary Talent on bass, Vinny Mad Dog Lopez on drums. They just catch fire.
It's not folk rock anymore.
Not even close. It's this incredible, messy, glorious fusion, New Orleans shuffle, R&B, jazz, funk, rock and roll. It's cinematic. He's building whole worlds.
Like Incident on 57th Street. That's practically a movie.
9 minutes long. And 4th of July, Asbury Park, Candy. That beautiful, wistful farewell to the Jersey Shore adolescence he knew he was leaving behind.
And you get the first real live monster track here, too.
Rosalita, come out tonight. Yeah, the ultimate showstopper for years. Pure, breathless energy, escape, romance, rebellion, all wrapped up in this 7-minute epic.
Critics loved the ambition again. Sales.
Still lagging. Better, but not great. So by 1974, he's got 2 critically acclaimed albums, a killer live band, but commercially, he's still kind of invisible, and he's really worried Columbia's going to drop him.
Which brings us to Born to Run in 1975, the Make or Break album.
Absolutely. He felt it. He said later he knew he had one last shot, and that desperation fueled this almost insane ambition.
The greatest rock and roll record ever made goal.
That was literally the goal. He wanted to make a statement record, a symphony that combined everything he loved.
Phil Spector's Wall of Sound.
Roy Orbison's operatic drama.
Dylan's lyrical depth.
He wanted it all. And to get that sound, he needed the right musicians and a lot of studio time.
This is where the classic E Street lineup solidified.
Yes. 2 crucial additions, Max Weinberg on drums and Roy Bittan on piano.
Professor Roy Bittan.
Exactly. Max brought this incredible precision and power, a rock-solid foundation the band needed. And Roy, with his classical background, could play the orchestral, sweeping piano parts that gave the songs that cinematic feel Bruce was hearing in his head.
And Steven Van Zandt comes back into the fold too, right?
So Stevie's return was vital. He became Bruce's right-hand man, the conciliere. He helped Bruce translate those huge, sometimes chaotic ideas into actual song structures, arrangements. He had the ear for balancing the poetry with power.
The recording sessions, though, legendary for being difficult.
Grueling is the word. Bruce was obsessive, perfectionistic. They spent months just on the title track, getting the sound right, pushing the musicians, the engineers himself to the absolute limit. Making that record nearly killed me, he said.
But the result?
Changed everything. Born to Run, the song in the album, it was just this defiant roar. Love, escape, desperation, hope, all crashing together. It was the sound of the E Street Band finally fully realized.
And the reaction was immediate.
Instantaneous. The album exploded. And then came the covers. Time and Newsweek in the same week. Unheard of for a rock musician back then.
The hype machine went into overdrive.
Completely. The myth was ignited. White hot. But right away, Bruce felt uneasy. He was suspicious of it. He worried he was becoming a marketing invention, not the artist he set out to be.
Which leads us right into the next phase. The crisis of conscience, the exile, finding the truth. Phase 3, 1976 to 1981.
Yeah, that anxiety about fame, about being misunderstood, it collided head-on with a major professional crisis.
The lawsuit.
The lawsuit against Mike Apple, his manager, it got ugly. Predatory contracts, disputes over publishing rights, control of his music.
And the result was?
He was legally barred from recording new material for almost 2 years. Think about that. You're on the cover of Time and Newsweek, you've finally broken through, and suddenly you can't go into a studio.
Silenced.
He said it felt like someone had stolen my voice. It was a period of intense frustration and exile, really.
But the band didn't just sit around.
No way. They hit the road hard. They toured relentlessly during that lawsuit period. And that adversity, that constant playing, it forged them into an absolute powerhouse live act.
This is where the legendary marathon shows really took shape.
Absolutely. They built their reputation city by city, night after night, purely on performance.
Yeah.
They had nothing new to sell, just the show. And it cemented their bond, their chemistry.
And during this difficult time, he found a new key relationship professionally.
Yes, John Landau, the critic who famously wrote that "I saw rock and roll future" line after seeing an early show.
He becomes the manager.
And producer.
Producer first, then manager later. Landau provided something Bruce desperately needed, especially then. Grounding, discipline, a kind of intellectual rigor. And maybe, sources suggest, a bit of that steady father figure presence he never really got from Doug. Landau became a crucial stabilizer.
And Bruce himself was changing during this exile. It wasn't just frustration. No, it was a period of intense artistic growth. He started reading seriously. Literary giants. Flannery O'Connor, Steinbeck, James Agee, Let Us Now Praise Famous Men.
Moving beyond the romantic street operas.
Definitely. His focus shifted. He started thinking more about adulthood, responsibility, the compromises and struggles of working-class life, not just the escape from it. He was maturing as a writer.
So when the lawsuit finally settled and he could go back into the studio,
He had a completely different mission. He wasn't chasing glory anymore. He wanted truth. He actively rejected anything that sounded too polished, too romanticized. He wanted to stare reality in the face.
and that record was Darkness on the Edge of Town, 1978.
Which sounds exactly like that mission. It's lean, stark, emotionally raw. It's the sound of growing up and realizing it's not always pretty.
And the connection to his past is still there, but it's different. Adam raised a Cain.
It's still got that biblical fury dealing with the father-son wound, that generational pain, but there's also a shift.
And songs like Factory.
Exactly. Factory is this stark, almost journalistic portrait of his father's life, punching the clock, the daily grind. And you hear Bruce moving past just anger or fear. There's empathy there now, a real attempt to understand the constraints, the humanity of the man who cast such a long shadow.
Yeah, and the tour for Darkness.
Legendary, even more intense than before, 3-hour epics. Bruce was possessed on stage, leaping around, talking directly to the audience, explaining the songs. Pure commitment. This is really where the boss nickname stuck, not just for the music, but for the sheer command he had.
But Darkness was, well, dark. He felt something was missing.
Yeah, he felt it was only half the picture. Life wasn't just grim struggle. There was still joy, release, dumb fun, romance, even amidst the hardships. He wanted to capture, as he put it, the whole fucking thing.
Which led to The River in 1980.
Right. And he realized pretty quickly that one album couldn't hold it all. The highs and the lows, the tension between the things that pull you down and the things that lift you up.
So double album.
A sprawling double album.
Yeah.
It allowed him to put the party right next to the pain.
You get the straight-up rockabilly fun of Cadillac Ranch, Sherry Darling.
And his first top 10 hit, Hungry Heart, which sounds upbeat, but the lyrics are actually pretty bleak.
Classic Springsteen contradiction.
Totally. But then, on the same record, you get these devastating moments of truth.
The title track, The River.
Which is just heartbreaking. Based directly on his sister Jenny's life, getting married young, dreams deferred,
Yeah.
that small-town tragedy.
And Independence Day, another look at his father.
Yeah, but with even more acceptance, more understanding of the distance between them. It's a farewell, but a gentler one.
So The River becomes this kind of map.
An emotional atlas, yeah. It charted the whole landscape of American middle-class, working-class life, the joys, the sorrows, the whole deal. And it really cemented that duality in him. The guy who sings about despair to the guy who somehow saves you from it with rock and roll.
Which sets the stage for the absolute peak of his fame, but also the internal collapse. Phase 4, 1982 to 1986.
Yeah, the aftermath of the River Tour was rough. Huge success, massive crowds. But he comes home and emptiness. That silence he'd been running from. It was back, louder than ever.
He talks about a major depressive episode around this time.
His first really significant one. Terrifying. He felt lost. Started taking these long, solitary drives, just observing these fading American towns, feeling like he was fading too.
And out of that despair comes something completely unexpected.
Nebraska, 1982.
Yeah.
Just stunning. And it came about almost accidentally. He bought a little TIAC 4-track cassette recorder, basically an home demo machine.
Not a fancy studio setup.
Not at all. Started recording these songs by himself in a spare room in his house. Just him, an acoustic guitar, harmonica, whispering the lyrics into the machine.
And the sound itself became part of the art.
Totally. The tape hiss, the echo, the intimacy. He called it accidental magic. And the songs, they were dark.
American Gothic, people called it.
Inspired by things like the film Badlands, Flannery O'Connor's stories, songs about killers, drifters, people on the absolute margins, charting this moral void. Nebraska, Atlantic City, highway patrolmen. Chilling stuff.
And then he tried to record them properly with the E Street Band.
Yeah, they went into the studio, tried to flesh them out, electrify them, and it just didn't work. It lost something essential. The soul of it was in the rawness, the intimacy.
So he made a brave decision.
Incredibly brave. He told the record company, the demos are the album. He insisted. Said anything else is a lie. Shocked everyone. But Nebraska stands as this masterpiece of minimalism, this incredibly courageous confrontation with his own darkness and America's.
But the pressure cooker was still on for a blockbuster.
Oh, yeah. The label needed a hit, a stadium record. After the quiet intensity of Nebraska, Bruce deliberately swung the pendulum way back. He needed songs that went outward.
Enter Born in the USA, 1984.
The juggernaut. And the central paradox of his career, really, embodied in that title track.
Because the original version was
An acoustic dirge. Bitter. Angry. About how Vietnam veterans were treated, abandoned. A protest song, pure and simple.
But the recorded version,
Electrified, anthemic, massive drums, synths. The sound completely overwhelmed the lyrics for most people. It sounded like a celebration.
leading to that infamous Reagan moment.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan praising him during a campaign stop in New Jersey, trying to co-opt him as this symbol of patriotic pride. Bruce was apparently horrified, utterly misunderstood, used by the very system his song was critiquing.
It's fascinating that during this period of peak global fame, selling tens of millions of records, playing stadiums worldwide, he was miserable.
Profoundly isolated, by his own account, battling serious depression again. He'd achieved everything the American dream, the rock and roll myth, promised, and he felt empty.
And you can actually hear that loneliness in some of the hits if you listen closely.
Absolutely. I'm on fire, that simmering desperation.
Ooh.
And Dancing in the Dark, the biggest hit of all.
Which he apparently hated writing.
Hated the idea of having to write a calculated hit single. Landau basically pushed him hard for one more potential single for the album. Bruce went away furious and banged it out in like 10 minutes.
And the lyrics are almost painfully honest about his state of mind.
Can't start a fire without a spark. This gun's for hire. And especially, man, I ain't getting nowhere just living in a dump like this, sitting around crying over you.
He's talking about his own creative frustration, his feeling of being stuck, trapped by success, and it becomes this massive global dance anthem. The irony is crushing.
So 30 million albums sold. He had it all.
And as he said, I had everything I thought I wanted, and I was the most depressed I'd ever been. Success didn't fill the void. It just made it bigger, harder to ignore.
Which inevitably leads to the dismantling. Phase 5. Therapy, breakup, and rebirth. 1987 to 1992.
The end of the first act. It started feeling like an ending even with the big live 1975-85 box set. Huge success, cemented his live legend. But Bruce felt it was like a tombstone, documenting something that was over for him emotionally. And his personal life was reflecting that sense of unease.
Definitely. His first marriage to Julianne Phillips, they moved into this big LA mansion. He felt completely out of place, alienated. Said the marriage felt symbolic, not real. Famously told stories about sleeping on the floor because the bed felt too big, too cold, too unreal. He just wasn't ready, wasn't emotionally equipped to be a partner then.
And that collapse fed directly into the next record.
Tunnel of Love, 1987, which is basically a divorce album made before the divorce was finalized. It's stark, introspective. He recorded a lot of it alone, using synths, drum machines, stripped back the big E Street sound again.
And the theme is
fear. Doubt. His fear of not being able to love, as he put it. Questioning everything about relationships, commitment, and his own capacity for intimacy.
Brilliant Disguise being the prime example.
Devastating song. It's not just asking, is my partner hiding something? It's asking, am I hiding something from them, from myself? It's this whole thing, this persona, just a brilliant disguise. He was realizing the myth, the armor, was preventing real connection.
And realizing that led to the hardest decision.
The breakup of the E Street Band in 1989. He told them essentially, I need to see who I am without you. It wasn't personal animosity, but a necessary psychological and artistic step for him.
But devastating for the band.
Oh, incredibly painful, especially for guys like Clarence Clemens. It was like losing family. But Bruce felt, you have to understand, that the band itself was now tied to that very myth he needed to escape. The boss, the Jersey hero, the stadium savior. He had to cut the cord to survive.
So he physically leaves New Jersey, too, moves to L.A. permanently.
Seeking anonymity, distance, trying to just be a person, not a symbol.
And two crucial things happen there that start the rebuilding process.
Yes. First, his relationship with Patti Shalfa deepens. She was in the E Street Band, a musician herself from Jersey. She understood him, understood the pressures. She became his anchor. The person who, he said, brought me home to myself.
And the second.
Fatherhood. Their first son, Evan, was born in 1990. That changed everything. Gave him a concrete purpose outside of music, outside of the myth, grounded him in a way nothing else had.
But there was one more piece needed for the real transformation.
The crucial piece, therapy. Around 1989-1990, he finally starts seeing a therapist and really digs in, confronting the childhood stuff, the depression, the legacy from his father, the silence.
He credits it with saving his life.
Absolutely. Saving his life, making him capable of being a husband, a father. Finally breaking that generational pattern he'd been so terrified of inheriting.
And this intense period of self-examination leads to another creative burst.
Yeah, resulting in the two albums released simultaneously in 1992, Human Touch and Lucky Town.
Which felt very different from each other.
They were. Human Touch was the result of a long, sometimes difficult process, trying to write about connection, vulnerability, trust as an adult. It's polished, maybe a bit labored in places, reflecting that struggle.
Whereas Lucky Town
was written fast, like a bolt of lightning. Raw, urgent, directly autobiographical. About redemption, finding love, the miracle of fatherhood. Songs like Living Proof. A direct thank you to his son for saving him.
And releasing them together was acknowledging that duality.
Exactly. He realized one was about the man he wanted to be, the effort involved, human touch. The other was about the man he was becoming, the grace he'd found, Lucky Town.
Then came the '92 tour, with a completely new band, no E Street.
Right, a band of highly skilled LA musicians. Technically brilliant. But
That, the magic, the history.
for many fans, yes. It didn't have that shared history, that almost telepathic chemistry of E Street. The shows were professional, polished, but maybe missed some of the old fire, the communal feeling.
But maybe that was the point, to not replicate the past.
I think that's exactly right. He needed to prove, maybe just to himself, that he could stand on stage as Bruce Springsteen, the man, the songwriter, not just as the boss fronting the E Street Band.
He changed his look too, less denim, more suits.
A more mature, understated aesthetic. He was telling stories between songs, talking about adulthood, fatherhood, rearranging old classics, like doing Born in the USA acoustically, finally letting the lyrics land, playing tender duets with Patti.
So that tour, even if it wasn't what some fans expected, it was necessary for him.
Essential. It marked the end of that first long, tumultuous act. By 1992, he wasn't the kid running from Freehold anymore. He was a father, a husband, a survivor who'd faced his demons. He dismantled the myth and was, as he might say, finally whole enough to move toward the man he was always becoming.
Okay, let's try and synthesize this incredible journey, the first 20-plus years.
Well, if you boil it down, those first 2 decades were this relentless, almost desperate struggle to escape the silence, the constraints of his childhood in Freehold.
Which paradoxically led him to build this enormous myth, the boss, the voice of a generation.
Exactly. A myth so big, so demanding, that the armor he built eventually became a prison itself, leading to that emotional collapse in the mid-'80s.
So the arc we've traced, from that dark kitchen in Freehold to the LA mansion in therapy, it's really the journey from being a mythological hero to becoming a self-aware human being.
Yeah, I think that's right. And maybe the most powerful insight isn't born to run success or even born in the USA's dominance.
What is it then?
For me, it's the necessity of the E Street breakup and the therapy that followed. That period in the late 80s, early 90s, that's the pivot point.
Dismantling the armor?
Dismantling the armor he'd spent his entire life constructing. It was an act of profound artistic and personal courage, really. Self-preservation, and it's what allowed him to survive emotionally and ultimately to go on and create some really powerful, mature work later in his career.
He spent so much of his early life terrified of becoming his father, inheriting that darkness, that silence.
Yeah. And the irony, when you look at this whole arc, is that he didn't escape that fate by conquering the world with rock and roll anthems. That actually made it worse in some ways.
He escaped it how?
He escaped it by doing the opposite. By quietly stepping away from the myth, firing the band, going into therapy, and finally learning how to live with the darkness, his history, his father's legacy, instead of constantly trying to outrun it. Acceptance, not just escape.
So thinking about this whole story for you, the listener, if Global fame and becoming the boss didn't ultimately solve Bruce's deepest issues. Maybe the lesson isn't always about striving harder or running faster.
Right. Maybe the question to ask yourself is, what part of your own life, your own history, your own internal struggles are you constantly running from?
And what might happen if, instead of running, you found a way to quietly turn around, acknowledge it, and learn maybe just to live with it?
It worked for him, so maybe it could work for you. That's all for today. Let's meet up for the next podcast. Have a nice one.